Jim, you got any headlines for Truth is Stranger?
YouTuber Adam22 gifts his porn star wife with a $400,000 lime green Lamborghini after she filmed a scene with another man who she said was better in bed than her husband.
And I see you sent me some pictures too.
Bought my girl a Lambo truck to celebrate her first scene.
No, we're definitely not doing that one. How is that a JimSpiracy? How is that a JimSpiracy?
Well, you just showed it. This is a white dude who let his white wife get double dipped by a black dude, and then he buys her a Lamborghini. Now, I don't care where you at in the world, and only in America can you come up with some white crap like that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The dude, and wait a minute, listen, man. The guy's name is Jason. Jason Love.
Got something to say, you wanted to play, then come running my way and ruin G status is dead. No, ready to go, about to go in, you already know. Got my instructions, now give me your audience, hand me your mic and I'm ready to blow. One for the money, two for the show, three for everybody who encouraged me to go, get it. We finally did it, I ain't never turning back, shawty. I'm fully committed to my beliefs, I'm committed to the sin. I'm about to give them what they want, what they need, what they ask for. Give them what they want, what they need, what they ask for.
And now, from a QAnon quadruple fortified wine cellar in a compound in the heart of Appalachia, it's the unicorn of the unknown, the mouthpiece of America, the speaker of the secret, and the host of JimSpiracy, Jimmy Dodds.
Hey, man, do you ever feel like that's what our job is, to give them what they want, what they need, what they ask for? Hey, man, welcome to another episode of JimSpiracy. Hey, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, okay? It's very important that I get y'all to hit the subscribe button and notifications and all of that, because otherwise it don't matter. You can't see what we're doing. So do that for me, okay? Hey, tonight we're going to talk Loch Ness. Yeah, that Loch Ness, the Loch Ness Monster. We're talking about the Loch Ness Monster tonight, y'all. We got an amazing guest. His name is Mr. Ken Gerhard, okay? You've seen him on just about every TV show that's ever talked about cryptids or cryptids. Believe me, he'll be in there to correct me in a minute. Okay.
How you doing, Jim?
I'm cool, man. I'm cool. What's up with you? How are you, bro?
I'm doing okay. No news on my cancer, but another scan next month.
Well, I mean that's good too, because you'll get to a point that people will start getting disappointed. They call and check you, and you be like, "I'm doing good." And they be like, "Damn." Every time I call him, he doing good. They're gonna stop calling and checking on you. Pretty soon you're gonna be 5-10 years out. They be like, "Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm still struggling."
I know. Half the time I think people are gonna start saying, "Is he faking this?" So.
Please. Anyway, hey man, good to see you. You look great. You sound great. And if I may just throw this out here, just before I forget, hey man, it's a very, very small group of JimSpirites, the people that tune in every week. But hey man, you got a group of people praying for you, man. Honestly.
Thank you.
So
appreciate it.
Okay. Granted, we didn't give you no gas money to go across the street and drive across the country and see the old dead black woman, but other than that, we got your back.
All right, first one, we got to talk about Maui. And you got to have some JimSpiracies about this one. Don't you, Jimmy?
What does that say right there?
Maui
Survivors
is
say,
not
do what?
for sale. Survivors say developers want to buy the land where their homes once stood. I think that's what it's about.
When did these things just catch on fire, man?
I know. It was just a few days ago.
I mean, I'm asking, when did they just catch on fire?
It's
They ain't
crazy.
been too long caught on fire.
All right, what do you think of this video? One of the conspiracies is why is the fire going all the way out onto boats on the water? And the other is that how did it do a complete circle around the city?
That just the looks of that looks creepy. Look, man, I don't even feel like giving out my creepologist theories on that because you know who the guy that just got in trouble with the recent shootings here, the chief of police, was it in Florida?
Oh, yeah. That is a weird thing about this. I'm glad you brought that up because I grabbed that headline. I think this is what you're referring to.
Yeah,
So-
okay, read that.
The chief of police who's handling the whole Maui thing is the same chief of police spokesperson for the Las Vegas shooting. I mean, damn.
I mean, come on now. I mean, I know y'all was sitting back there like, oh, okay, here they go. They just, yeah. But did y'all hear that? Did y'all just hear that? You know, I mean, because it could just happen once. You know, but it happened twice. And Chris and I, we know somebody that was there during the time of that Las Vegas shooting, and there's still things about that she won't even talk about.
Right. But she was certain that there were multiple shooters.
Yeah,
So.
definitely.
But here's the
Wow.
thing, like I think it goes back to what this headline is implying. This is the conspiracy theory that makes sense to me, that it was a land grab because it's right next to a resort that didn't burn, and it's land that developers have been after for a long time. So it's pretty creepy.
You know, man, sometimes you get tired of calling a joker.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just too...
I mean, honestly.
One thing that's uplifting from this is this really cool video. This church, you could see it looks perfectly preserved, and everything in that neighborhood is burned and charred. And then watch, I think the video pans back to it. The grass isn't even touched at this church. So God decided to preserve the church and let everything burn around it. So it's one uplifting thing. Not so.
I'm not gonna say it.
Say something. What do you think?
I'm not gonna say it. I'm acting. I'm not saying a word. Come on, man.
Well,
Come on, man.
You know, we haven't done a show, and it's funny how fast this came and went. No one's talking about Bronny James anymore so quickly. Like, I don't see anything on the sports pages about it. He had his heart attack, and he's not playing this season, but we don't know anything else. And by the way, the top recruit in Alabama, same thing, except he died.
First of all, let me say that my prayers go out to LeBron and his family. Period. Okay, I'll just say that and be done with it. I would say this, and see, you have a way of getting me on this. I'm pretty sure that Bronny James was very well. He was very well medicated. There we go. Is that fair? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. You can't avoid this anymore with the side effects of the clot shot. You just can't. It's everywhere.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, it's not just one kid. I mean, it's happening all over. It's happening everywhere. It's not just,
Yeah. That's why, because we only hear about the high-profile ones. Like Bronny, this kid is pretty high-profile. He's like the number one recruit in the whole state of Alabama, and he's dead.
Duh, right.
So we hear about that, but people are dropping all over the place. As a matter of fact, I didn't download this, but look up Steven Crowder. He did a music video called Vaccine, based on the Cranberries' Zombie. It's really kind of scary. It's funny and scary at the same time. So, good stuff.
Okay,
look that up.
Okay, there you go. See?
Let's end on something upbeat, even though it's not really upbeat. Did you see the Alabama brawl?
That was terrible. That was terrible.
Who were you cheering for in
it?
that fight, Jim? You're not gonna laugh with me on this?
Okay, first of all, did you see the way that the black dude threw his hat off? Look
Yeah,
at, watch this,
right,
watch this,
right
watch
there.
This. Look. There you go. My last day, right here. There it is, my last day. But before I go, look at this. Look. Terrible.
It's so
And look.
trashy,
That,
really.
Look,
Look at the one swimming
Excuse me?
over. that guy's swimming over to join the fight.
no, he's swimming over to protect the well-being of a fellow brother.
Yeah.
Now, just the fact that that black man can swim. Oh, man, he get 150 points from me just for that. Just for that alone. Look, and see, that's why them white folks that's why they is still stuck. They ain't like, did you just see what he just did? He swam all the way across. See that?
I love all the little hearts and like emojis coming up on the screen.
This is terrible.
Oh, here comes the popo. Oh. And now they cut to this. I think the chair guy is in this clip here. Watch at the top of the screen. I think this is where the chair guy comes in.
Everybody in this clip is over 48 years old.
Yeah,
when you
true.
When you get 48 years old, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to be honest with you. We ain't got as much to live for as what you think we do.
Oh, here's chair guy. Know. There he goes, chair guy.
Wow!
Oh.
I said order. Order, damn it. Order.
Well,
that right there. That right there. I don't look. Let me explain something to you. And this is just one of those things in life, Chris. I'm gonna give you Emmett Till. I'm gonna give you George Floyd. And I'll give you one other one. I'll let you pick it. But every now and then there's gonna be something that's gonna happen that, as an African American man, I will be able to sit back and look at it and say, my. But for the grace of God, there too go I. I mean, I'm just gonna say it ain't nothing you gonna say to me that's gonna take the that was a terrible scene.
And we enjoyed it immensely. I lost your camera.
Whatever this is, it's massive.
Field researcher Ken Gerhard is one of the world's foremost experts on mysterious creatures and is writing a book on Loch Ness. He has spoken to hundreds of eyewitnesses who swear Nessie exists.
The descriptions are very consistent, and this leads me to believe that, yes, in fact, there is a population of remarkable, immense animals in Loch Ness.
Hey, man, listen, welcome back. Welcome back to JimSpiracy, the show that, you never know when the hell we'll be back. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll be back in 3 weeks. But no matter, we'll be back, okay? Hey, but we're back, and we're back with our guest, Ken Gerhard. Ken is the author of The Essential Guide to the Loch Ness Monster and Other Aquatic Cryptids. Come on here, man. What's going on with that, man? Is that what's happening with that? What's
Well, I'm honored to be a widely recognized cryptozoologist, Jimmy, which means that I traveled the world and searched for evidence of unknown animals, mysterious creatures, and cryptids is a term that's been in the field for many years, and that basically just describes like a Bigfoot, a Loch Ness Monster, a Chupacabra, Mothman, all the different mystery creatures that we talk about in this field. But this particular book, I'm very proud of. It's my most recent. And of course, it features the rock star, Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. But also, we have a number of similar creatures that have been reported around the world. And we could talk about some of those if you like.
Man. So you are actually a cryptozoologist. I mean, that ain't even, that's actually a thing. A cryptozoologist.
Well, here's the thing.
I've seen you on quite a few shows, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
They
Thanks for watching.
Go to you.
Thanks for watching.
So tell me this. How did this become your life's calling, your life's work? Now, I know that might be a bit much, but how did you ended up venturing down this path?
I actually get asked that question a lot. Now, first of all, there's no such thing as a degree for a cryptozoologist. So full admission, I don't have a full scientific accreditation. Anyone can call themselves a cryptozoologist. But in my own case, it's just been a lifelong passion. Started when I was a kid. heard about Bigfoot, and something just clicked in my head, and I've been obsessed and on the track of unknown animals ever since. I didn't plan to make it a career, but decades ago I started writing books and going to lectures, and I hooked up with a producer from the Travel Channel, and so I've just been very blessed in terms of having had opportunities to, pursue this fascinating calling.
Based off of some of the shows that you've been on,
Mm-hmm.
what's been one of your favorites? I mean, to where you be like, that was it. I did that. What was one of your favorites?
Oh man, that's kind of you to say. Well, I do a lot of shows where I'm just a commentator, which is great. I don't mind. I love sitting down and being interviewed and talking about this stuff, but I always really I'm a field researcher. So I love going out into the wilderness, jungles, Alaska. I did a series up there that was a lot of fun called Missing in Alaska. And but yeah, I've done a couple shows, one down in Mexico looking for the Chupacabra. In France, I was searching for a legendary creature known as the Beast of Gévaudan. And so some of those shows where I get to get out in the field and just kind of beat the bush, get my boots on the ground and trek through the wilderness, those are always a lot of fun to make.
Okay. Let's get to the Loch Ness Monster. Okay. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. Now, in my list of things that I have to worry about, in my list of reels, the Loch Ness Monster is not necessarily high on my list. But if you ask me about the Loch Ness Monster and you present to me some of the evidence that I've seen, now it could happen. Okay, what's going on with the Loch Ness Monster, man?
Well, first off, Jimmy, I appreciate skepticism, critical thinking. That's very important these days. A lot of people will just, there are a lot of people out there that just want to believe. Obviously, we all want the Loch Ness Monster to exist. That would be the coolest thing ever. But it all comes down to evidence, right? So there is actually a lot of evidence people don't realize in terms of the Loch Ness Monster. There are thousands of eyewitness sightings. They're pretty consistent. People don't really describe the head and the neck. That's kind of a misconception, but they see these giant whale-like humps in Loch Ness sticking several feet out of the water. Sometimes one big hump or several humps, very smooth, dark color. And those sightings date back, almost a century, modern sightings. Admittedly, a lot of the photographic evidence for Loch Ness has been faked. There are tons of hoaxes associated with the Loch Ness Monster, so that's a good reason to be skeptical right there. But there's also sonar evidence that gets overlooked quite a bit, and that goes back to the 1950s, and there have been many examples of scientific institutions deploying sonar on Loch Ness and contacting very large objects underneath the water, several hundred feet down, not schools of fish, but like big solid things. And those have been analyzed by experts. And so, it's not conclusive, but it's intriguing at least that you have these consistent eyewitness descriptions, and then you get the sonar evidence, a few films that are kind of convincing. So, I think you can make a case there.
Okay, so, but it's still that same fish in that same lake in Scotland, right?
Well, Scotland's the most famous. Yeah, Scotland's the most famous, but it's actually it's a global phenomenon of lake monsters and sea monsters, or back in the day they were called sea serpents because they had a very long serpentine form, but they're huge, and the descriptions are usually like 15 to 30 to 40 feet long, sometimes longer. A horse-like head or a long muzzle. Some people say it's horse-like or sheep-like. camel-like, long body, fins, and the humps. They always, these animals swim up and down and they create these big humps in the water. So those accounts go back like centuries all around the world, off the coast of Scandinavia. Here in the U.S., we have famous lake monsters like the Lake Champlain monster, or Champ. In Canada, they have something called Ogopogo. Japan, Russia. So these creatures are, the descriptions again are very similar, and they've been reported all over the world. So I think most likely we're dealing with the same species. And getting back to something you said earlier, Jimmy, it was very profound. All of this stuff seems very scientifically improbable. And working with scientists and working with the San Antonio Zoo as I do, I understand, that there's a high level of improbability, but it's not impossible. And that's what makes it really fascinating.
Let me ask this for you. When we talk about the Loch Ness Monster or whatever, this myth has been around forever. You went there as a kid to visit Loch Ness. Is that right or what?
Correct. When I was 15 years old, I was there. I won't say exactly when that was. It was back in the day, for sure.
Back in the good old days.
Yes. Yeah, I went back there years ago. And, that was really it was kind of an epiphany, man, when I was a kid, because I was getting interested in all this stuff, Bigfoot. And then my mother was a travel agent, and she arranged for my family to take a lot of exotic vacations. And one of those was back in the 80s. My dad and I went up to Loch Ness. He's a big fisherman, so we did some angling up at Loch Ness, trout and stuff. But I was all in as a kid. I had a movie camera, like an 8mm movie camera I walked around with. I would interview people. I'd sit by the lake and try to see if the monster was going to surface. I think that was a very pivotal moment in my young life, and why I do this today.
Tell me about the Japanese fishing boat incident. We've got a picture of that. What do you mean?
That's a weird one. All right. So in April of 1977, a Japanese fishing trawler called the Zoyo Maru was off the coast of New Zealand. And they fished this thing out of the ocean that you see in the photograph there. It was floating on the surface. I guess birds were eating it and stuff. And they took some photos of it. They took some tissue samples because no one could identify it. As you can see, it appears to have like a small cranium, a long neck, vertebral column, big body flippers. It's decomposing, obviously. So yeah, that was, no, they did have to throw it back into the ocean because they were worried about it polluting their cargo. They had already caught a bunch of fish and they were taking it to market. So that's the Zoyo Maru carcass from 1977, and that made big headlines around the world. What does that look like to you, Jimmy? What do you think? Do you have any take on that?
You have to understand that if you ask me from my elementary school teachings, I would have no idea. But if you just ask me on my reading between the lines, I'd say it looks like it could probably have fathered a spaceship here a time or two.
That's fair enough. A lot of people said it looked like something called a plesiosaur, which is like an ancient marine reptile that swam around, tens of millions of years ago in the oceans. There you go. Long neck, small head. Flippers, like kind of like a turtle without it. Instead of a carapace, it's got this long neck. Those things were around in the Earth's oceans and were very prevalent up until about 64 million years ago. So, and that's one of the candidates for the Loch Ness Monster. A lot of people think the Loch Ness Monster might be something similar, like a surviving plesiosaur. So that's what people thought and have thought for years about the Zoyo Maru carcass. But But here's the thing: there have been in recent years some tests done on those tissue samples that were saved, and those tissue samples indicated a very specific type of protein. I can't remember the name. I'm not a chemist, so I think it starts with an E. But there's a protein in there that is typically found only in sharks, family elasmobranchs. Sharks, of course, are the large family of cartilaginous fish, very ancient fish that have some unique properties. So there you go. Maybe this is a decomposing version of a giant shark. We're not talking about Jaws per se, but there are huge like whale sharks, basking sharks. There are sharks in the ocean, filter feeders that are massive, like 30 feet long, 40 feet long. So who knows?
Okay, now tell me this now. What is the story with the Lake Champlain in New York State?
Yeah, Lake Champlain is a huge lake between New York, upstate New York, Vermont, and Quebec, Canada. And there's an alleged lake monster there known as Champ or Champy that has been reported there since the 1800s. P.T. Barnum, I think, was putting up a reward for it at one point way back in the day. But similar to the Loch Ness Monster, what people describe the giant hump or humps, sometimes a long neck and a small head. There's a very intriguing photo from July of 1977 taken by a woman named Sandra Mancy, who lived up there in Vermont or was traveling through and took a Polaroid of this thing that emerged from the water, and it appears to look like a plesiosaur or something. But what's interesting to me about the connection between Lake Champlain and Loch Ness is that even though Lake Champlain is much bigger in terms of area, they're both very similar lakes in that they are very cold water, deep lakes. They're known as glacial lakes, Jimmy. They were carved out when the glaciers retreated at the end of the Ice Age. So they're inhabited. There's the Mancy photograph there, July 3rd or 4th, 1977, I believe. Oh no, July 6th. I'm sorry, 1977. That was taken in upstate Vermont in Lake Champlain. So my own opinion, if you connect the dots, I think there are enough similarities here to make a case that whatever resides in Lake Champlain, which is a mystery, is also the same thing that we find in Loch Ness, Nessie.
So we're not talking about just one. There's a few of these. And this is what happens when we talk about Sasquatch or any of these other things, that we have to realize that. So the Chupacabra, I had the Chupacabra lady on one of my first shows. The lady down in Texas who had caught one of the Chupacabras. One of the things that people try to say is you have the Loch Ness Monster, you have Sasquatch, you have all of these different things, but it's not like it's just one. There's a whole bunch of them scattered out. So how many Loch Nesses are we possibly dealing with?
That's a great question, Jimmy. So the important word within cryptozoology that's often overlooked is zoology, which is the scientific study of animals that involves things like, genetics and animal husbandry. And so you're right. There's not one Bigfoot running all over the country. There's not one Loch Ness Monster. There has to be a family or a breeding population, right? Has to be a viable breeding population. Okay. It's very hard to estimate these things. It would be pure speculation. Now, in terms of what people are describing on the Loch Ness Monster, it's a pretty large animal. So if there's a bunch of them, a family group in Loch Ness, it seems like there would have to be, I don't know, at least a dozen, maybe more. Even then you're probably dealing with some genetic bottlenecks and inbreeding, with these animals. But here's the thing, Jimmy. What if the Loch Ness Monster, the Lake Champlain monster, and some of these other aquatic cryptids are actually living in the ocean and traveling into these lakes and rivers, because all these places are connected to the ocean, Champlain and Loch Ness. And, just like other sea life, things like eels and salmon, sturgeon, seals, a lot of animals, whales, will actually travel from the ocean into fresh water on occasion and then go back out to sea. And that could explain why we don't see them in the lakes that often, because they're not there all the time. They're actually breeding in the ocean, perhaps. So that's one possible hypothesis. But yeah, there definitely have to be a bunch of these things if they actually exist. You couldn't. They would certainly die out, go extinct, if you didn't have a fairly reasonable breeding population.
Okay, so wait a minute. Let me get this right. Now, let me make sure I get this one right, because this one here might have went over the head. Okay, so oceans to lakes, right? Mm-hmm. So are we saying that can the same animal go from salt water to fresh water? Or are we saying
some animals can. Certain fish species can, if they're what's called andronymous, and their body goes through a chemical recomposition when they do this. It's called osmoregulation. Some sharks are even able to do this. If you've heard of bull sharks swimming into rivers and things, freshwater, that happens. It's less problematic for species like whales that are air breathers, right? So, I mean, they can go from freshwater to saltwater. It doesn't really affect their biology, their chemical makeup. But for fish and other animals, yes, there would be a transition that would have to be made from freshwater to saltwater. And not all species can do that. It's kind of a specialized adaptation.
Okay, let me ask you this one here, okay? And I apologize for my mispronunciation before I even attempt this. Oingo Poingo in Canada.
Oh, yes. Ogo Pogo. Although Oingo Boingo is a fine band from the 80s that had many good hits. Ogo Pogo. Keep in mind, Jimmy, Ogopogo is not the original name of this particular mystery animal from Canada. The Native Americans there called the Nahatik was the Native American name. So the stories go back with the local tribes, for a century or more. But in the 1930s, there was a hit song in England. I guess what did they play back in kind of like swing music and stuff. So there was kind of like a ballroom hit called Ogo Pogo, and the local people there in Canada just they made a new version of the song, and they made it kind of based it around their monster there. And so Ogo Pogo was a name that was given to this creature in the 1930s. I'm not real familiar with that particular photo. I think that might be in the background, a thing called Squally Point. Squally Point is a spot where there are a lot of sightings of the alleged Ogopogo, but this does seem to display what people describe, which is a series of humps, very snake-like body and a series of humps there. So,
all right, man, hold up, because on that picture right there, he don't look too dangerous. That kind of looks like a great big old snail look like a big old snail out of his shell.
Yeah, the head is faced away from us, right?
How many people has the Loch Ness ate up? Now, let's see if he really deserves to be on our list here.
Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge that there might be some people that got ate up that we don't know about, right? So we can't account for everyone. But the Loch Ness Monster considered to be generally aggressive or dangerous to humans. There's the story from 580 AD, way back in the 6th century, of a gentleman that was killed in the River Ness by a great water beast. It's kind of an old story, but it might be a parable or something. And here's a creepy story though. In 1953, there was a guy named John Cobb who was trying to set the world speed record on across water, and he had this fancy boat called the Crusader that went 200 miles an hour, and speedboat. And he was driving across Loch Ness, and he hit something, and his boat disintegrated, and he died. And a lot of conspiracy theorists to this day think that the Loch Ness Monster was responsible for that accident, and that's what his boat hit when it disintegrated. So John Cobb might be one possible victim, accidentally, of course, to the Loch Ness Monster. But I'm not aware really of any people describing being attacked or anything like that. So I don't know if they're real dangerous to people. Maybe more so fish. If you're a fish, look out.
Okay, so what do you think of the famous black and white photo of Nessie?
Oh, yeah. Well, Jimmy, this is the iconic photo or image.
That one kind of looks like a dinosaur.
Yeah, it does. You're right.
Looks like the Flintstones Bam Bam. I mean,
Dino.
They dinosaur.
Dino, yeah. Okay, so
I said Bam Bam.
This is the famous image that most people associate with the Loch Ness Monster. This was allegedly taken on April 1st, 1933. And it was supposed to be taken by a gentleman named Robert Kenneth Wilson, who was a surgeon from London while he was on vacation, taken at Loch Ness. But in the 1990s, it was pretty much proven that this photo is a hoax. And there's a whole story behind it, but it was a revenge story. And some monster hunters that had been burned by a newspaper created this artificial Nessie out of a toy dinosaur head and a toy submarine, and they put it out in the lake, and they took a photo, and the newspaper got hoodwinked, goes the story. And so this is widely accepted now as a fabricated or a hoaxed photo, even though it's a very famous image. And you know what, Jimmy, if you zoom out on this photo, which I don't know if you guys have a zoom out, this is obviously up close. The original frame that this photo is in, it looks very tiny. I mean, it's far away, but you know, it's down in the bay, and it just looks like a very small thing. It's not real imposing as far as size, but who knows? I guess it's probably a hoax, but who knows?
Now, let me say this to you, though. When we do talk about Loch Ness and big Sasquatch, Bigfoot, and a lot of these other things that are going on just here in Earth, you know, we talk about space so much. We talk about space and this and this. Hey, man, we know less about Earth and about this water and we know less about our very own Earth than what we know about space. So there's people that have managed to stay up under the radar like Nessie and some of these other ones, Bigfoot, and some of them that have managed to stay between the cracks. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you, Jimmy. I mean, 71% of the world's surface is covered by deep water, right? That's 12,000, that averages 12,000 feet deep. And, you know, we all know about that recent tragedy at the Titanic wreckage, and a perfect example of how difficult and dangerous it is for us to explore thousands of feet below the Earth's, the ocean's surface. As far as land surface goes, I mean, a good chunk of the world is still wilderness, you know, up to, you know, maybe 40% of the Earth's surface. And we consider all the swamps, jungles, mountains, deserts, tundra. There's a lot of places people don't go. And I've been very blessed. I've traveled all over the world to 26 different countries on 6 continents. I've seen a lot of the Earth, and a lot of it is very remote and, still uninhabited by man. So you can always make that argument that if man's not there, there might be some things there that we haven't discovered yet.
Whew. Have you personally had a sighting?
No,
Okay.
I've never seen any of the creatures that I search for, but what I tell people is I'm convinced. I've heard Bigfoot, Sasquatch a few times over many years. One time in particular, in August of 2003, I heard some very loud and aggressive, deep grunting noises that sounded like an ape, and this was in North Texas at a place called Cottonwood Lake, and I found other evidence there too, footprints, mutilated animal carcasses, things that led me to believe that I was very close to a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, for sure, on that one occasion.
Okay. Now listen to this. Now, this I'm gonna lob this up here to you. Okay. Tell me your favorite chapter or story in your Loch Ness book.
Oh wow.
I told you I was going to underhand it to you. Now, come on, man.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I love all the Loch Ness history, and I'm cheating here a bit. I got to be the book. You know what? I really like, because I'm kind of a science nerd, Jimmy. So towards the back of the book, there's a chapter on animals that we know exist that could be mistaken for the Loch Ness Monster, because I think that does happen, that people see things, like big sturgeon and eels and giant catfish and things like that. And then also there have been a lot of mysterious carcasses that have washed up on beaches around the world going back, to 1808, the Stronsa beast up there in Scotland. And, a lot of these carcasses have ultimately been identified, but some of them are still a little mysterious. And you would expect if something like the Loch Ness Monster exists, eventually one of them is going to wash up dead on the shore, right? Does that just make sense over a long period of time? So,
when its time comes up,
yeah.
I mean, that last little thing that we looked at back there, that could have been its time. We might not have got a chance to really see it.
That's true.
So, tell me this. What is another underwater cryptoid that you feature in your book? And are any of them dangerous? I mean, come on, but we're talking about a giant squid and 20,000 leagues under the sea type crap, man. What's up?
Oh man. Well, these things tend to be a lot more dangerous the farther back in time you go. So if you're talking about like legends of sea serpents off the coast of Norway back in the 1700s, those were man-eaters. There's a group of teenagers. According to one story, there was a group of teenagers who were skin diving, snorkeling off the coast of Florida back in the 1960s, and a storm came up and this strange creature emerged from the ocean. It looked like a plesiosaur, and according to this particular story, all of the teenagers were killed by this sea creature, except for one gentleman named Edward Brian McCleary, who survived. This is a story that's well known in the field of cryptozoology, so that's a pretty scary story. It plucked them off one at a time, Jimmy, as they were trying to make it back to shore, and just this thing would come up out of the water, long neck, small head, and grab them and drag them under. That was what the survivor, that was his story. So those are the scariest ones I can think of off the top. I mean, these things ram boats sometimes. There's several accounts in my book of them running into boats in places like Norway and Australia. And so that would be pretty scary if you were out there. You'd need a bigger boat, right, Jimmy?
Well, tell me this. Hold up, because now let me ask this, because I've been hearing about sharks and whatnot, alligators doing this to boats lately. What's going on?
Killer whales.
Is man
Yeah.
getting comfortable, or is he? What's happening?
I mean, ultimately, I think it just comes down to respecting nature and just having a full respect for the majesty and the beauty, but also the danger of nature. And I mean, there are, in the news, we are constantly getting stories of people that are attacked by animals just because they're being a little bit too brazen, taking some risks. I mean, like the bison at Yellowstone, and then you have these two ladies in Montana that were attacked by an otter. I don't know if you heard that story recently, and that otter did some damage. Sharks, alligators, So we're still, very much in a wild world, Jimmy. We're, like I said earlier, we're surrounded by a lot of wilderness areas. Man is encroaching on that wilderness area. And as we do that, there are going to be, encounters with, different animals that are protecting their habitat or their young, or, so it's just something to think about.
Well, I think if you put a couple more of those stories out there and just state that, Lockie's been out there getting a couple of them too, I think that we can inspire a few more people to cheer for him a little bit. Let me go back to your book real quick, because in your book you argue that they may have descended from a whale or some kind. What is it, real quickly? What tell the people what that is. What you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not my theory, Jimmy. It's a theory that's been around a long time and has surfaced from time to time. We talked about plesiosaurs, which are reptiles, right? But I think that if the Loch Ness Monster exists, one of the intriguing candidates is an ancient type of whale called a basilosaur or an archaeocete. These were ancient whales that were around 40 to 20 million years ago. They, very unlike modern whales that we're used to seeing, they had a very long snake-like body, long vertebral column. They didn't have a blowhole yet. Their nostrils were very high back on their head. Whales evolved from hoofed animals, by the way, if people didn't know that.
I've heard that.
Yeah, so something similar to a hippo is what they evolved from. So yeah, there's a basilosaur or an archaeocete. They seem to fit some of the criterion in terms of smooth skin, no scales, no dorsal fin per se. They move up and down. Where we talked about that earlier, that mammals, aquatic mammals, they undulate vertically up and down. Reptiles and fish go side to side. And all the witnesses say it goes up and down like this, which would seem to be a mammal. Also, whales can travel from the ocean to fresh water. We talked about that earlier. They can make that transition. And whales are very comfortable in cold water. And that's important because we talked about a lot of these lakes where these things are seen are very cold. And whales, of course, have the mass typically or the adaptation to deal with that. So just a theory, but I think that, there's a chance if these things exist, they could be descended from these ancient snake-like whales.
Well, hopefully they'll keep doing what they're doing, and they'll keep remaining hid, and they'll keep popping up and popping back down, and they'll remain safe. Ken, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on JimSpiracy. I appreciate it. Hey, keep up with Ken. Go to facebook.com/Ken Gerhard and keep up with him, okay? We'll be right back with something from the book of James. Man, thank you again, Ken. That was that was that was a deep interview because Ken stood his ground. He didn't back down. He stood his ground. So I'm glad at you, and truthfully, we ain't as far off as what you think. Chris, where you at, man? You with me, man?
I'm here. I love that interview. I love Loch Ness.
Hey, man, but
I'm all in on Loch Ness, actually.
Loch Ness just got to eat up a couple more people, and I realize that's Loch Ness's problem.
That'd bring it.
I mean, seriously, he just has to. That's all.
Here's my pet theory. I think Loch Ness is a Pliosaurus. And I believe that, like, God wiped out the dinosaurs with the flood, but that wouldn't kill the Pliosaurus. So they're still around deep in the ocean. And that's my theory.
Okay. I got
So
you.
I loved hearing Ken. That was great.
I agree with you. Look, and that's why I made this statement. Like, look, man, I'm not completely in agreement, but you know what? I consider the Loch Ness Monster to be kind of like the Men in Black.
Yeah?
There
In
you
what
go.
way? They just might
You
be
said
out
in
there.
what way? I mean, in other words, you don't really see a lot of pictures of the Men in Black,
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
but you hear their name a lot.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Okay.
You got a Bible story for us?
I don't know, man. First of all, I'd like to apologize to everybody for this taking so long. I keep always telling Chris we need to cut it down. But let me say this. This week I've been re-enrolling my boys in school. So now little Jamil is now in high school now. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, exactly. And it just kind of has a way of just making you think about time passing. And for me, I think about the last 2 years. And even with all of the long hours that I work right now, I think about how long hours we worked at Fearless.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to be honest with you. But having said that, I'm still thankful. Okay. I'm still thankful. Things is going to be okay. I'm at a good place, and I'm thankful for the opportunities. And when you get to be 61 in life, okay, you love the little things. You love them little bitty things in life, man. And I think the whole point of today's Bible story is, God has a plan for me. Okay. And I'm going to try to make this quick, man, and let me be honest with you. That was going to be my Bible story. And Chris was like, yeah, but you know what? That right there goes hand in hand with this scripture right here. And so there we go. There we go.
Tell us about St. Paul's shipwreck.
Yes, exactly. And that was taken from Acts 27:28. All right, that's the story of St. Paul's shipwreck. All right, now I'm going to try to paraphrase this a little bit. But it says that wind smashed everything on the boat, and everybody was terrified, petrified. And the angel came to Paul and said, hey, you little bruh, fear not. God needs you in Rome. Okay? And so, in other words, the angel's telling him, you will be saved. He told him, he said, everyone on the ship has a purpose, and you will be saved. God's got work for you to do. Now, Paul tells everyone, and I'm gonna vaguely quote this, but he tells them, and now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but only of the ship. Did you hear that right there, man?
Yeah.
In other words, now, the ship wrecks on an island, okay? The men want to go kill the prisoners that's being transported so that they won't escape. I've been in law enforcement. I understand both reasons behind that.
Yeah.
Paul says, no. All that's on this ship have a purpose. They get to land. They get to the land, and a snake bites Paul's hand. Wow. Now, Paul's hand miraculously recovers. Paul miraculously does not die from the snake bite. And the local chief sees this and asks to be healed from a sickness. And he ends up getting healed by Paul. See, so happy that he finishes them, or should I say he furnishes them with the new ship and everything that they need. Did you get that?
So it's a happy ending, basically. They lost the ship, but everyone survives. They get a new ship.
And everything they need. And the thing is, here's the thing, Chris. God has a plan for me. God has a plan for you. God has a plan for everybody on this ship that we just gonna call life. Okay? Listen, man, thank you guys for joining us again. Like we always say, may the Lord watch between me and thee while we are absent, one from the other. We'll see you again.
Give them what they want, what they need, what they ask for. Give them what they want, what they need, what they ask for.
Yeah, are you not entertained? Ain't this what they tell you hustle for? I'm on my gladiator monologues, Russell Crowe. And honestly, I don't see what the fuss is for. You let your money blow and all we tryna do is sow it. Just so you know, this is Kingdom Biz. No Brooklyn Nets, I think we know who team this is. Come on, come all, and don't forget to bring the kids. And y'all gon' need a different planet just to dream this big. So bring your stacks to the table, and I'ma bring my faith. And at the end of the day, we gon' see who win in this race. And since God is the judge, he'll probably throw out my case. So do us a favor, get that look off your face. They be like, you spit that fire, got them industry raps. Why you doing that Christian rap? Nobody listen to that. And I reply with a sigh like I'm missing the fact. I'm trying to spread this holy gospel till my savior get back.
I'm going in one time, these record labels all in my face, trying to forfeit my race. But still I'm going in one time, no matter the opposition I face, staying true to my faith. I'm about to give them what they want, what they need, what they ask for. Give them what they want, what they need, what they ask for. Give them what they want, what they need, what they ask for. Give them what they want, what they need.
Did they win that game, Jimmy? The Chiefs?
Who, the Chief?
Yeah.
Did we win?
Yeah. It's preseason.
Hell no, we didn't win.
Sometimes the best
see,
teams.
that's what I'm trying to show you. That's what I'm trying to show you about football. Trying to show you how you're supposed to go through the preseason and show you what you're supposed to look for. And therefore, let you know what you are supposed to see in the future. Just like them little bitty plays that came from that backup quarterback lets you know he'll be ready. He'll be okay. Okay. Look at that. Right there. Look right. Look right. Look up. Look up. Look.
Mahomes is loving it. So I guess if Mahomes gets hurt, you got a decent backup?
No, yeah. Well, he'll be good. He can ride the bench for 5-6 years.
This is the year, my friend. The Bills are going to avenge and defeat the Chiefs.
I know. So was last year. And the year before that.
What they need, what they ask for. Give them what they want, what they need, what they ask for. Give them what they want, what they need, what they ask for. Give them what they want, what they need, what they ask for.